Hello, my name is Brett Madrid, and I am going to show you how to set up a basic Node Express server. And we're going to do it completely from scratch. So that means I am going to create a brand new GitHub repo. Go to my GitHub page here, and you go up here, you click New Repository. And we'll just call this Node Express tutorial 1. And I won't add anything to it. I'll add a gitignore for Node. And a basic license. That way we can clone it and bring it down. So I'll create the repo. And now we have a basic. I'm going to hit clone. And now open up my terminal. And go into a directory, cd documents. See what I got there. Cd node. And I'm going to put it right here. Git clone that repo. Then I will cd into that directory. Cd node express tutorial 1, and I will start my code editor of choice, which I use VS Code, so that will launch VS Code. Okay, so now we have, oh, I thought I asked it to create me a gitignore file, but it didn't. That's okay, we can create it. So the very first thing we will do is we will create a gitignore file. So let me open up a terminal down here, and I will use the command npx gitignore node, and that will create a standard gitignore file with the default answers. And you notice it's done, and it creates for us a gitignore file up here. If we look at it, you can see all these different things that once you push a repo back up to GitHub, anything having to do with any of these extensions will not be pushed up to GitHub. The next thing we need to do is to create a package.json file. Package.json is where we will lay out the structure. It's the structure of our program. And to create that, we use npm init, and then -y will answer yes to all the default questions. If you don't put that, then you will have, they'll answer you with like a handful of questions that most people just hit the enter key just to go through and answer the default answers. So to already answer to the default answers, you stick -y. And if we do that, that should create for us up here a package.json file. And it also kind of shows us here. So if we look at the package.json, this basically gets built for us. And so now we have a gitignore and a package.json file. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create an index.js file. You can do that in the terminal down here by typing touch index.js, or you can create it over here. Just create a new file, index.js. And what we're going to do is, if you're new to back-end development and you come from a front-end perspective, the way that we import or bring in files on the back end is we will declare them as a variable or as a constant. And so we're going to bring in express, and that means we're going to require. And what this does, let me explain. First, we're gonna install this package here, and this entire package is going to get installed, and it's going to get it stored into this constant right here. So, since we entered that line, let's go down here to our terminal and let's install Express. So I'm going to use yarn. I seem to have, whatever you use, npm or yarn. I use yarn, so I'm going to go yarn add express, and that will install Express. And how do we know? We can go to our package.json, and now we will see as a dependency Express right here. So now that we have Express installed, now we're going to create a constant, and we're going to call it server. Some people call it app. You can call it whatever. The school that I went to learn how to do all this, we called it server. And now we're going to make it equal to Express. And this will create a web server. What is Express? Let me explain a little bit about what Express is. When Node first came out, it was amazing. It allowed JavaScript to run not only in the browser but outside of the browser, which means that most web pages prior to the advent of Node were developed in JavaScript, combination of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, stuff like that. But the back end needed to be developed and served in either C or C# or Java or Ruby or Django, or and the list goes on. But with the advent of Node being created, that means now you could write your server in JavaScript, and that has the advantage of your front-end client and your back-end now are speaking the same language, and it becomes a little bit more efficient to set things up and to do things. And so the basic Node, when it came out, it provided some facility to be able to make these requests, a GET request, a read, basically read, create, read, update, delete. But it was a lot of code. The code wasn't real easy to read and write. And so along comes Express, which is basically just a JavaScript module that sits right on top of Node. And Express gives us a lot of built-in functionality that makes writing the server code a lot more efficient and easy to read. It's very small, it's very lightweight, it's very unopinionated. Some people think that's a good thing. If you want a framework like Django or Ruby, those are back-end development tools that do a lot for you, but they have a very opinionated way of doing it. Express is very, very lightweight, which means it provides you with the basic nuts and bolts of doing things, and then the flavor of how you want to get things done, you can install various packages. And that's, I believe, is the strength of Express. Express is very fluid, very very easy to work with, very lightweight. Okay, so enough talk about Express. Express gives us a lot of functionality that makes writing restful server code easy. And so now the very next thing we're going to do is we're going to just declare a port. Later on, we're going to move this port into like a special hidden file. But right now, just to make it real easy so you can follow along, I just set this at port 5000. And I'll put the semicolons for those of you that it bugs if they're not there. Some people it bugs them if it's there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to call upon an express method that we're given. One of the cool things that we get is we're going to use this constant right here, and we're going to call server.listen. And what we're going to do is we're going to make the server listen for incoming traffic on a very specific port. Whoops, I didn't mean to put those single quotes there. We're going to say server.listen. So the server is going to perk up its ears and it's going to pay attention to anything that happens on this port. And when it does, we're going to just send an anonymous function, call back, and I'm going to display let me see, I'll just try to make this a little bit more, use the backticks. Those are the little, that's the key right above, all the way to the left of the number 1, your little backticks, and that allows us to insert into a string a variable. So that's why I did that. And I'm going to give us a blank line, and then I'm going to maybe do something to draw attention, and I'm going to say server running on HTTP localhost, and then because we're using the backticks, we can do this. We can insert a variable right directly into the string. It's called string interpolation. If you surround the variable with curly braces and a $sign and use backticks, then that allows you to do that, which is pretty cool. And so then we're going to do that. I'm going to save this file. Control S, so now I've saved it. And let's go to package.json and let's add a start script. So let's get rid of this test right here for right now, and we're going to add a start script, and we're going to make it, we're going to replace this stuff in here. We're going to replace that with node index.js. What this says is when I start this, it's going to go down to scripts and it's going to look for something called start. And if it finds it, it's going to execute that line right there. So let me do that. And down, now I can just go down to my terminal and write yarn start. Yarn, and then I'm going to call this right here start. Yarn start. And bada bing, bada boom, there we go. We say server running on localhost 5000. And we can even verify it one more way. We can go to a browser. Now let's go to an empty browser window and let's do localhost 5000. And bing. Now that might look like a mistake, but that means we tried we tried to execute a command that gets data, that pulls data, but we didn't write an endpoint to take care of that yet. But the fact that we're getting this message means that we successfully set up a server. And the next thing we're going to do in the next video is we're going to set up an endpoint where when we go to this, it's going to give us something a little bit more meaningful. So I hope you stick around for the next tutorial, and I'll see you then.